It's wonderful to be with you all. Rosie and I are really delighted to be with you. We're going to show you a 1-minute video first before we begin. Isn't God amazing? I look at a video like that and it just makes me want to burst into praise. I'll talk about why we've shown that video in a minute, but first of all, I'd like to ask the question, what is purpose? Because we've been focusing here in Faith and Business on purpose throughout this year. There are many analogies we can use: a guiding light, an anchor in storms, a calling, a compass in life. What's the difference between an internal drive and external goals? Such as President Kennedy's "we're going to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade," are quite different to Star Trek's "to boldly go where no man has gone before." You can see the quote there from both well-known sources. Goals are like a pull kind of energy, whereas purpose provides more of a rechargeable battery kind of energy, which in essence is limitless. But knowing our purpose isn't enough, though. For it to bring about lasting change, there needs to be transformation, which I believe from a biblical perspective is repentance. Romans 12, verse 2 springs to mind: be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We're all part of different organizations, big and small: our family, our workplace or business, our church, our community, our country, etc. What's the best way that purposeful transformation can take place in each of these organizations, including our businesses? I want to introduce you to the idea of Boyd's Law, and the materials of which I've taken from an organization I work with called Authentic Business. In 1986, a guy called Craig Reynolds, based in New York, was working with robots and wanted to discover whether there were rules by which autonomous robots could communicate with each other and perform common tasks. He was inspired by observing how geese fly together. Geese equal birds, and in New York, birds equals Boyd's, hence the name Boyd's Law. He asked questions such as, how do they fly in formation so naturally? What do they need to do? And out of his observations came a law for robotics. It's still used today. On one of our Authentic Business workshops, a student doing a PhD in robotics said that he knew all about Boyd's Law, and it's still taught. Craig saw that birds have 3 rules that enable them to fly together. The first rule is very simple: the rule of separation. Each bird needs to know that they are different from the other birds. They need to know what they're able to do. So let's quickly apply this to your context. Within your group, each one of you need to know uniquely why you are here, who you are, and there's so much more that we can learn about ourselves, so much more that God can reveal to us if we are open. Knowing our own story is key. Don't try to be someone else. They're already taken, as it says. Be the best you can be. That is my story. The second rule in Boyd's Law is the rule of cohesion. Notice when birds fly, they have a certain distance between each other, a specific angle, speed, etc. If the birds break this pattern, they become much less efficient at flying together. In this rule of cohesion, you can ask questions such as, who is flying around you? How far apart from the others are you? And where are you in relation to others around you? What complementary gifts do you have? How do you communicate with each other? You might think you know yourself pretty well, but how well do you really know those you are working with? How do you work together as a team? Being creative on your own is one thing, but what is it like being creative together? That's another exploration that takes place, the law of cohesion, which is our story. And finally, the third and final rule is the rule of alignment. The birds must go in the right direction. Why do birds fly south for the winter? Because it's too far to walk. Okay, that's an awful joke. But seriously though, what's the direction you want to go in? What's the purpose for that direction? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is the big story that is unfolding on this world stage? That is the big story. Purposeful transformation occurs when an intentional space is created and sustained for individuals to safely explore and align their inner motivations and narrative. And this quote should come up. That's my story. And align these with their organization's purpose. That's the big story, in a deeply collaborative and connected way. And that's our story. I think it's good to ask, what is the purpose of the organization or organizations that you are part of? If you don't know what the purpose is, you can't align yourself to it. And if others within the organization don't know, then they can't align themselves either. If you are clear what it is, then it is your work to align yourself. No one else can do that for you. No one else can tell you to align yourself to our story or the big story. Rosie.
Thanks, Chris. And I think, David, I see you've got a hand up. Really happy. Is there a question that you might want to ask at this point? I'm not sure, David. I can't quite hear you. Maybe, don't know if your hand was up, but I thought just before I carry on, but let's hold any questions and we'll wait till at the end, and I'm sure we can answer any questions you might have. Thanks, Chris. I think what's really helpful there is actually just giving us a framework of, I love that sense of birds to boys and the my story, our story, and big story. And I just wanted to share with you how that has really resonated for me at In Kind Direct. And as Rob, you said, I've worked for many large corporates in the past and found myself joining In Kind Direct only 3 months before the start of the pandemic. Now, In Kind Direct is the charity that provides a very simple solution to companies to donate products to us, which we then deliver to thousands of smaller charities across the UK. So a lot of our customers are charities, and they think of us as like a Tesco online, and they can come on to our website and find all of those life's essential products, anything from toilet roll through to washing up liquid and shampoos and conditioners. And as an organisation, we've been running for 25 years. We're celebrating that birthday next year. And as I came into the organisation, the question was, okay, well, where do we want to go for the next 25 years? What's that big story that we at In Kind Direct want to create? And what's that direction that we want to be taking? And as a new CEO into an organization, it's the question that you often ask yourself as you join. And it's your role to sort of help the organization find that big story. So we've really taken a lot of time over the last year and a half to ask us key stakeholders, what do we think that direction is? And we have a new purpose as an organization. And that purpose is very much enabling more communities to thrive. In the past, a lot of what we focused on was not the why we were here, but the what we did. So we talked a lot about moving pallets around. We talked about saving products from going to landfill, but actually we lost and hadn't emphasized on the heart of those hard choices that communities are having to make day in, day out, about whether they're choosing to put food on the table, whether they're choosing to heat their houses, or whether they've actually stopped purchasing some of those core basic essential products which give us all dignity and keep us safe, clean and well. And in terms of thinking about that big story as an organization, I found that for me, being able to know my own personal purpose, my story, has been so important. And there have been days where knowing that my purpose in life for me is transforming lives, and for each of us it's very different, but holding on to that has given me that energy that you talked about, Chris. That hasn't been a goal energy, but it's been a purpose inside driven energy, knowing that some days when I'm deep in the finances, which isn't really my forte, unlike Rob and many of you, or deep into, actually thinking through some of the more challenging discussions around restructuring an organization that happens when you often come in to an organization, that actually knowing that my personal purpose connects up to the big story of In-Kind Direct has really powered through me through many, many days here in the organization. So I think it's really interesting thinking about that connection. But the piece that when Chris and I have been talking about, is I think we often miss in this conversation around purpose is the our story. And we jump from personal purpose up to that big story. And I find it, and I don't know about you, and I'd be really interested in the breakout groups, is I think that can often be the hardest bit to get right in any team or any organization that we're part of. And we all have lots of our stories in our lives, whether we're in relationships, whether it's at our church, whether it's in our sports team, we're connecting in so many different ways with others. And I've had to spend a lot of time helping the team that I'm in really understand how we cohesively join together to create that big story. And we've spent time as a team thinking about our own strengths, our own values, but then how can we resonate and reflect and celebrate those with each other? And it's been in the small ways that we've done that, actually calling out to a colleague and saying, do you know, I really see in you an absolute strength today of honesty and integrity, or I see an incredible strength of innovation and creativity. That's been amazing, and really supporting and encouraging that, and really building into those natural strengths and preferences that we have. It's also comes across when we have those challenging conversations, often happens. It's not always plain sailing, but knowing what our weaknesses are and our areas that we're not so strong on, and finding others who can help us, is not only biblical, but it's just transformational in an organization. So I know it's an area that at In-Kind Direct we're needing to do more. We're really needing to do more to better help people, to build teams that build naturally on our strengths, and give those people who just love the big picture thinking and those that love the detail the opportunity to do both, so that we can draw on that and together get it right. I think, Chris, you've also got a story about finding an our story as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rosie. Authentic business, which I mentioned, which is where I first heard about Boyd's Law and how we can apply it. We help people and organizations, businesses and charities connect to their stories. And we do that with individuals, self-employed, organizations like In-Kind Direct. Reggie has used authentic business, and also even organizations as large as the NHS with 1.5 million staff. I'd like to briefly share with you an example of an our story in my life. Recently, our church network, which is part of New Frontiers, started an organization called Business Link. And it came about because business leaders recognized that they needed to be supported in their world of business and wanted their businesses to glorify God. And the aim of Business Link is to bring church and business leaders together to help them understand how they're able to work together and draw on each other's strengths to be more fruitful in the areas that God is calling them. I mention this because we want to emulate Jesus's example of building teams and working together. Often we as business leaders are good at meeting by ourselves, and church leaders are good at meeting by themselves, but it doesn't seem to be very common for both church and business leaders to meet, work and pray together specifically for God's purposes. Over to you, Rosie.
Thanks, Chris. So as we sort of recap what we've shared, I think that framing of, I hope, my story and our story and big story is one that maybe many of you have thought of, or it could be useful as you think about the different places that you're working in and engage with in the groups of people where God has placed each of us. You know, I think that we've been thinking a lot, Chris, myself, about, as we prepared for this, thinking about Jesus and his example in this. And I think about, ultimately, we all know that our purpose is to love God and love our neighbours and to live this out. But in our businesses, I think we have that real opportunity to be asking God, okay, you know, reveal your big story for us. What does that look like? What is your desire for us in this place at this time? And, you know, I think we also have a choice to make about how we bring others on that journey with us. And Chris, you talked about church leaders. I think I'm challenged there to think about how I can go and have conversations with the leaders in my church around what I'm doing day to day, and how I can bring them and bring their strengths to bear into what we're doing here at In Kind Direct. So I think that we can each become part of each other's stories, because we know that that unity and togetherness and cohesion is so valuable and so important in breaking down that secular and sort of sacred divide that's often out there. So we you know, suggested a few questions in the breakout session, really to add a theological element, which we thought was interesting, but we would be really happy to take any questions that you might have for us about what we're doing, or about some of the framework that Chris has shared.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. That was absolutely awesome. I was just fumbling around trying to unmute then, so that wasn't that slick, sorry. Thank you, guys. I've got to keep an eye out for some questions, but I just loved how you sort of focused on stories there. I think, you know, Christian circles, we used to hear a lot about people saying, oh, tell me a testimony, and it used to freak people out. And it's basically, a testimony is a story. And when I first meet people, get to know people in church or business, I generally try to say to them, you know, just tell me a story. I just want to find out something about you. What makes you tick, you know? I think Chris or Rosie, you mentioned sort of, let's think about why we do things, not necessarily what we do as well, which I think is so important. You know, why do I get up in the morning? Not to do spreadsheets, but to engage with people and to get to know them better. So yeah, let's see if anybody's got any questions. If not, I might just like jump on somebody that I can see on my screen. So there's a bit of comments about Business Link going on there. I think Chris is talking about a different Business Link to the government funded Business Link that was around a few years ago. Do you want to just say a bit about the Business Link you're involved in, Chris?
Well, I joined before, I joined after the Business Link had chosen that name. So I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not sure anyone does know why that particular name came up, but the idea is of linking business leaders to the gospel, and I mean, very similar aims in some sense to faith in business, but really to bring church and business leaders closer together, so that together they can be more fruitful for what God is calling them to do.
And this is within the network of churches that you're involved in, isn't it, Chris? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And I only mentioned it as an example of our story, so that was all I mentioned.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. David, you had a question earlier on, I think. Do you want to unmute and ask that of Chris or Rosie? You need to unmute, David. I can see you talking.
Sorry, Rob. Which David are you referring to?
Sorry, David Maringu Destiny.
All right.
Who had David? You need to unmute. I don't know whether we can do it from our end. No, there we go. Right, you're unmuted now, David. Ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just saying hi, no problem. I was joining. Thank you. I'm listening.
That's cool. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I saw a question or a comment there from Ken around the sort of the relationship between purpose and vision. And for, I'm sure many of you who've been setting visions for your organization or purpose, the semantics and the discussion around that can take some time before you even get, start. And I think we here at In-Kind Direct shows, and it's interesting that Faith in Business is focusing on purpose and not vision. But I do think that for me, purpose is much more about the why we exist. And a vision is potentially a future picture. But I think the purpose is at the heart of, it brings us into that. And it can often answer the question why more deeply than a vision. And often many organizations have a vision and a mission. We just decided to keep it as simple as possible and focus on purpose. But I won't go into the Greek side of that, which Ken seems to mention, but that's just more from a lived out experience of why we chose that.
Excellent, thank you guys. Karen's got a question I see pop up. Karen, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Chris. Great to see you. Good to meet you, Rosanna. Just my question is, in a world of business that often, to be honest, plays lip service to the kind of vision and purpose, often stated on vision statements, but in practice drives the organization on a more profit and efficiency process model in terms of what is actually legal. What are your thoughts in how we can bring more people focus and a better Christian perspective that focuses on making the world a better place? Sorry, that's a very long question, but it's in the chat.
Great question, Karen. And having worked at Virgin for many years and working with a number of the different Virgin companies on their purpose statements, I think it's an interesting question for large corporates is, are they really today, can you just focus on, your financial return? And I'd like to think that actually there's a real sea change I've seen in the last 20 years. I don't think that there are many corporates that it's really just about lip service. I'm interested in other people's experience, but my sense is that actually I'm seeing in a lot of our partners, I work with Unilever, I work with Procter & Gamble, I work with, and Kleenex and Kimberly-Clark and others. And it's really interesting. Everybody in those corporate organizations are people. And that is what's, at the heart of each of those organizations. So I think that how it's so important when we build that purpose, that it's thinking about our communities, it's thinking about the people internally, it's thinking about the environment, and it's thinking about overall financial sustainability and viability. And a purpose needs to encompass all those four quadrants. So I think that that enables a focus on creating a world that's a better place. And I'm seeing that as I talk to our corporate partners day in, day out, that it's not just lip service. There's a real belief. It takes time and it takes individual people and leadership to do that. But I think with the right leaders who've got the right heart, and I think as Christians, we're brilliantly placed to do that, and in the places that we've been placed.
And I'd just like to add, I was chatting at an event that Rosie and I were invited to a few weeks ago to the CEO of Unilever Europe. And one of the things I was chatting to him about was purpose. Unilever have been leading the way on purpose in many ways. And I was really impressed in just listening to him talk about, for example, Sure deodorant, and how every brand within Unilever, they will ask what the purpose of this brand is, what's the purpose of the product, and how are we connected, our purpose for working at this company and my reason for being, to this place where I'm in at the moment. And so it means that people aren't just producing something that makes someone smell nice, but what difference does that make in people's life? How does that make them feel better? What difference does that make when someone feels better to doing their job, or whatever it may be? And sort of how they encourage people to go deeper into exploring that when they're working as a team as well as individually. Makes a lot of difference. Someone else has a question, I think.
Excellent, David. Yeah, sorry, thanks, Chris. Yeah, David, the other David has got his hand up. So do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Thank you, thank you. My name is Christopher. I'm asking, this is a very good initiative and a very good insight. The question is, in Africa and most in particular Kenya, I don't know whether this program can be given an upper hand so that we may be able to partner with you.
I didn't really catch all of that, David. The connection is a little bit ropey, I'm afraid. But are you asking about connecting in with Faith in Business? Is that your?
Yes, and also in kind. We have some programs. So can we be able to be connected with InKind and Faith in Business? So because we run a program known as Destiny New Hope Foundation.
Sounds interesting. Rosie would answer the in-kind piece in a second, but in terms of Faith in Business, David, yes, please. I mean, do connect on a regular basis. We have the monthly calls that we're on now, and there's a prayer meeting, and there's some good mail that come out on a weekly basis as well. So just pop on the Faith in Business website. But Rosie, is there anything to say from in-kind direct perspective?
Very, very happy to connect David offline and understand what the needs are specifically in Kenya. In-kind direct, we do work internationally, but not yet in Kenya.
Okay, awesome, cool. Brilliant.
So I would love to connect with InKind in Kenya, and we are very glad that we welcome you. We'll have a very big conference on 28th April next year to fast, and I all invite you so that you may come, you see exactly what we are doing.
Excellent. Do you want to put some details in the chat, David, and then we can pick that up later? That'd be great. Thank you. We are getting on with time now. I think if there's Roger Fairhead, go on then. One more question. Keep it brief.
Keep it brief. I'll very briefly then. There's an organisation. I noticed we've got betterbusinessact.org has been posted. Richard Mabry very helpfully posted that. Thank you. I noticed also there's B Corps, which are growing quite significantly in the US, but also coming to the UK. Do you have any views on the help that they can offer to us as organisations?
Yeah, I've been quite involved in the B Corp work, and just think it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm really glad it's been picked up, through the Better Business Act as well. I just think what I love about it is it's changing the legal structure of organizations, and we've got some of the largest corporates. Chris, you mentioned Unilever. Unilever have become a B Corp, and I think this is the future. But I don't know about you, Roger, but I think what's so exciting is, wouldn't it be great if we had a world where it wasn't needed to have a different legal structure to ensure that we, enshrine in our organizations this desire, as you said, Karen, to not just be focused on the bottom line, but this is about people and the environment as well. But I do think at this time, because of the structures and what we work within, B Corp is having a real, it's a momentum that's growing, and I think it's really good and has a key role to play in changing the structures. And I think it's quite challenging to become a B Corp. I've had organizations, a lot of paperwork, and for small entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurial organizations, it's quite a high bar. And so you need to be quite a sizable organization. So it's not the answer for everybody, but I think it's changing the conversation and leading to a new direction, which is fantastic.
Just as a very brief follow-up, I was at an event with Alex Edmonds a little while ago. He talked about growing the pie. His research showed that companies who focus on purpose, whose main focus is on purpose, tend to generate more profit than those companies that are just focused on profit, which I thought was a really interesting finding and really helpful when we start to try and talk about this topic. So Alex Edmonds, Grow the Pie, brilliant book.
Excellent.
And it's fantastic to see data like that coming through now, Roger. 10 years ago, that was a question. And now we're actually being able to show 10, 15 years down the line, for those of us who've been in the space for a long time, wow, we can actually see the data reflects what we already knew to be true.
That sounds great. I think I have to get that book, Roger. That is, that's right. My thing. Show me the data. Show me the spreadsheet. So grow the pie. I'll put it on my Christmas list. Thank you, Roger. Lovely to see you.